Hello, everyone. Welcome to, I'm not sure yet what to call this. I'm hesitant to label it anything other than just today an opportunity for me to come on and share some things with you in this format. So it is a podcast. I'm going to cut that off kind of abruptly. I'm out of practice here. Should have faded it out and then sort of just killed the music. But it's a podcast format. Number one, I feel like that's just something that fits with our culture and sort of how we like to hear and listen. And that way, if you're doing things right now and you have other things going on, and you can pop me in your ear and listen. So it is a podcast format. Whether or not I'm going to label this as a podcast, and as any kind of label right now, we'll see. Let's just take it one step at a time. That way we'll just see where the Lord takes us. But the reason why I am even doing this one is because a week and a half ago on Sunday morning, the Lord challenged me with something. And if you watch that Sunday morning broadcast, you'll remember. But really the premise of it was, if we could just if we could peel back all the layers of everything and just simply had the words of Jesus. So I think it said it that Sunday. There's something like 750,000 words in the Bible, depending on what translation you use. Roughly that. I think it's something like that. You might check it and find a different variation, but I think it was something around that line. I don't have my notes up to remember the specific numbers, but it was something like that. And of those 750,000 words, there's something like 35,000 plus or minus, I guess, again, depending on translation, because a lot of translations, some add to, some take from, through their paraphrasing, however they're choosing to translate. Anyways, so of those 30,000, of those 750,000, about 35,000 are words that we attribute directly spoken from Jesus Christ. Again, I said it then, I'll say it now. I'm not saying, before you get sort of frustrated with me, I'm not saying or implying that all of the Word of God is not spoken by God. Don't forget Timothy, the book of Timothy tells us that all Scripture is given. It's God-breathed. So again, I'm not suggesting to hold any Scripture higher than another from a standpoint of saying that one was written by man and these are words of Jesus, so therefore they're more important. I believe every word given to us in the Word of God is important. However, the point I'm making to you, and the point I was making then, and this is sort of why we're on here again today, is the idea that if we could just take those 30,000 words, let's just eliminate the other 700,000 words, give or take a few, right? Let's just eliminate, and we're only given those 30,000 words. Are those 30,000 words enough for you and I to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ and to be saved? My premise is absolutely yes. Yes, there is. Now, I'm not suggesting, again, I got to sort of build here for a moment so that you hear what I'm saying and don't try to read into something. I'm not saying that I'm suggesting we throw the rest of the Bible out. That's not the point I'm making. My point is, what good is it for us to study all of the Bible and know so much about the Bible if we can't just start with the foundation of those 30,000 words given to us by Jesus that are very simple to follow? Because Jesus Christ is the central piece, the foundation for everything. He's everything. It was Jesus Christ that brought in the new covenant and brought the end to the old covenant. It was Jesus Christ that became the pivot point of all of history, not just Christian history, but really, if you could say, all of history. So I say all that because if you and I could just be challenged to just get back to focus on those words of Jesus Christ, and then you can't focus on the words without focusing on the one who spoke the words. If we could just focus on that part there, I feel like it not only would revolutionize our lives, but it would revolutionize the lives of those around us, and ultimately we'd become a Jesus movement once again. Not labeled by any doctrine, not labeled by any organization, not labeled by any decree, not labeled by any geographical region or church affiliation, but we would be simply known as the people of the way, those who follow Jesus Christ, which is ultimately my desire, and my sole desire for identity is not to be labeled by anything that I believe or anything I teach, but to be labeled by who I belong to and who I fellowship with and relationship with and serve, who is my King, and that's Jesus Christ. So I built on that Sunday, and more than likely, if you are a part of Antioch West and you do watch on a normal basis, you'll probably be hearing quite a bit of this on Sundays for a little while, because again, this is just something, it just right now, I just can't seem to get away from it. It's just something that continues to just work in me around the clock. And then we started some teaching on Tuesday nights, Zoom teaching, live Zoom teaching for Antioch West, and we're talking about it there. We're going to be talking about it in a different framework there. So Sunday morning it's probably going to be some more practical look at actual scripture, the words. Let's get into the words, and then sort of Tuesday. I guess if I could summarize Tuesday, we're going to get into Jesus and his mission, sort of type thing, his kingdom. But there's kind of a middle ground there, and that's why I said all that in the first 7 minutes here to get to the point of why I'm even doing this. I feel like there's a middle ground there, sort of the cream and we have the proverbial Oreo cookie. We kind of established the bottom wafer and the top wafer, but there's sort of a gap in the middle, and that's kind of the filling that makes the cookie just taste so much better. That's kind of what I feel like this podcast, whatever you want to call it, companion piece is sort of what I'd like to try to do, is kind of bring some depth to the whole piece of the Sunday morning and the Tuesday, and kind of put it in there. But also too, if you don't even watch Sunday morning or Tuesday, you still, I believe, can get, this can be a benefit to you. I think it, even if you're someone who is not a confessed church goer, or if you know someone that's not a confessed church goer, I mean, when you start talking about Jesus, that really kind of encompasses everybody, right? It doesn't really leave anybody out. When you start talking about Jesus, you're not trying to sort of target the church goers and the non-church goers. You're not trying to not trying to target simply the people who believe in this doctrine, or this, who affiliate with this organization, or this theological thinking. When you just start about talking about Jesus and kind of use him as the foundation for all of it, then there's really, it really encompasses everybody. So anyways, I say that because whoever you are, wherever you are, and however you choose to be joining us today, listening, that's sort of kind of how I landed here, but sort of providing that middle ground. But again, I'm sort of trying to get away from labeling everything and everything having a cool label and a nice title, and sort of shoehorning myself in. I'm just trying to follow what Jesus puts on my heart and what he gives me, and just try to do that and not worry about where it's going and what it looks like, and just sort of do it that way. And I mean, I even wrestled with sort of the idea, should I do this as a podcast? Should I do it live, more of a video podcast format, do it on video. I chose to do it this way because hopefully, to be honest with you, this is a little more comfortable for me. I don't have to sort of stare back at my face for 45 minutes. Plus, this gives you it takes the pressure away from you sort of feeling like you have to watch me just sit there and stare at you. You can just listen and just sort of follow along. So anyways, let's get into it today. Sort of just some opening thoughts here. Again, if you're recapping here, this really is sort of just, again, providing some deeper substance to some things we're doing right now. We're talking about Antioch West, and to be honest with you, part of it is just, as I've felt, just an opportunity for me to come on and share more of what the Lord is talking to me about. And if that is a benefit to you, then, great. I mean that sincerely. I hope it is a benefit to you and edifying to you in your own walk and relationship with Jesus Christ. But let's go back to something here, because I think it's pivotal to understand. I mean, we're gonna focus on this. Is, if I could title this something, it would just be titled, simply Jesus something. We're gonna focus on Jesus, right? Not from a theological lens, not from a historical lens, not from any kind of bent. We're just going to take Jesus in his simplest form, but also in his fullest form. So not trying to label him or shoehorn him in, trying to determine this or that. We're going to look at the entirety of the picture as we kind of sort of dive into this. We're going to put all of it on the table and not try to worry about where it's going and what it means and how it shapes, Christianity and theology. I think as we get deeper into this, you'll find that it does shape it, but it shapes it because you can't talk about Jesus and you can't focus on Jesus without it shaping who you are, what you think, how you think, your desires, your passions, your everything. I mean, even down to the core being of who you are, your faith and who you are as a person. You can't talk about Jesus and have a passion to know him without him changing you. So again, we kind of sometimes focus on the goal and not the process and what the process is about, but we're going to kind of flip it here. And if we can just get focused on Jesus and kind of just get him into us and into our hearts and his word and all of that into us, the process kind of it takes care of itself. But let's go back to something this, and again, trying to where to start here would be sort of, where do you start talking about Jesus, right? I mean, there's good luck when trying to land on something. You could start anywhere and everywhere. I mean, you could go all the way back to the beginning of Genesis, and you can go all the way back there and start there and tell the story of how we even got to Jesus Christ and what he meant. And we could go into, we could start with the birth of Jesus Christ, which was, what that meant, how that came to be. But actually, I want to kind of start with sort of the preamble to the end, right? The major pivotal moment of the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, which sort of cemented who Jesus was and propelled him from teacher and rabbi into Lord and Savior and King. I want to start right before all that happens, and I want to just focus on something that, again, let's look at it through the lens of the people that were there that day, and not with the ability that we have to kind of look back in sort of revisionist history and see things in a different light and go, wow, if I was there, I would have definitely, if I was there, I would have definitely known it was Jesus. I'm not convinced that was the case. I'm not convinced you and I would have been any different than they would have been. And somehow, because we're born in the 21st century, we would have figured it out faster than they did, because, they were just first century, agricultural workers, uneducated, illiterate, and somehow they were not as smart as we are. And somehow we've got all this amazing tools in front of us. And we've got, I'm sitting here with a soundboard and this fancy microphone and, headphones and a computer and, got my phone here and all this technology. And I'm brilliant because of the technology. And therefore I would have definitely known it was Jesus. I would have been like, guys, this is Jesus. Let's just, I don't know. To give an honest assessment, I don't know if I would have. I would hope. My hope would be I would have been one of the ones in the inner circle. But and the reality of it is, in my flesh and the reality of how hard-headed I am and stubborn I can be, I may not have been. I guess we could speculate on all of it. But and again, so I'm rambling here for a second, but just let's take it for a second through the lens. And so Jesus starts coming along, right? And people are spreading their clothes, their cloaks on the road. And Jesus is coming down from the Mount of Olives, and this the whole crowd of disciples begin to celebrate and praise God at the top of their voices, right? Luke 36, Luke 19, 36, 37, somewhere like that. I think that's right. Look it up real quick, but I don't have to save time. Luke 19:36. This is sort of Luke's version of it. And so the crowd is just going crazy. I mean, the anticipation, the excitement, the energy is building as he's getting nearer. Because this is the moment sort of they've been waiting for, right? This is the moment generations have been waiting for. This is the moment. I mean, literally, this is not just a 1 year, 2 year wait. This is a generational moment. This is a historical moment. This is a national moment here. This is what they've been waiting for. And all kinds of stuff comes flooding back. All the songs they used to sing came flooding back. And they were singing these songs and chanting and cheering and laughing. And I mean, if it was modern day, high-fiving and all that stuff. Because at last, their dreams were going to come true. It's finally here. Why not celebrate? It's about to happen. But in the middle of all of it, in the middle of all this, as they were sort of excited and high-fiving and singing and chanting and throwing their cloaks on the ground and just this jubilant atmosphere, they weren't paying attention to something. They weren't looking at the face of Jesus. They were looking at him, but they weren't looking at him, if you follow what I'm saying. Because if you would have looked at Jesus and looked into his eyes, you would have noticed something. He wasn't singing. Because verse 36 gives us this jubilant picture, but verse 41 says, when he came near and saw the city, he wept over it. Yes, their dreams were coming true. But they just weren't coming true in the way they imagined. Isn't that the case for all of us, right? Yeah, there was a pivotal moment. This was life-changing. This is generational. This was for world-changing moment that they were standing, being an eyewitness to. And I mean, who would not want to be there at this moment? I mean, if you know what you know now, and you could go back to that moment, how would you turn that down to stand there when Jesus is coming in? You know, this is a moment of all history will pivot on this moment, and everyone is sort of in this jubilation and this just euphoric mode. But deep in the heart of Jesus, there was this sadness, and they were about to see their dreams come true, but just not in the way they imagined. Because you know why? Here's the problem, and this is where we have to look at this before we can really understand who Jesus was. Because he wasn't the king that they expected. Think about it. He wasn't like the kings of old that had their sort of jeweled and ivory thrones that were just sitting on them, just, dishing out their wisdom and justice. And on the other hand, he wasn't really the great warrior king that some wanted. Some wanted that establishing of that powerful, monarch or king of justice and wisdom. The other one sort of wanted this warrior king to come and rescue them. But he didn't raise an army, and he didn't ride into battle as the head of the army. In fact, in sort of a typical Jesus fashion, he came riding on a donkey. Sad thing is, he wasn't even his own donkey. They had to borrow it. Doesn't that just tell you who Jesus is? And on top of that, they were cheering and high-fiving and singing and chanting, because to them, this marked the end of suffering and the beginning of conquering and jubilation and triumph. But he was weeping. What was he weeping for? Well, he was weeping for the dream that had to die, and sort of weeping for the sword that he knew was about to pierce the hearts of those who supported him. And on the other standpoint, internal, he was weeping for the kingdom that wasn't coming, but he was also weeping for the kingdom that was. And this sort of arrival in Jerusalem a few days before his death is one of, if not one of the, you got to say, top 5 best known scenes in the entire gospel. But sort of what was this scene all about, and what did Jesus think he was doing? And it kind of goes back to something here for a second. And let me pull back the lens for a second. And that is, you remember, and I was trying to look it up. I mean, hold on a second. I have a computer here. Let me just look it up because I was going to look it up and I forgot to do it. Let me just see when it came out. When did I've never seen it, so I can't. If you've seen it and you have a sort of a personal belief against it, I'm not bringing it up for that. Yeah, 1973. 1973, there was the film released, and I think it was the film, but there was something. Let me see if I can find it here. Look at good old Wikipedia if he'll tell me when it was actually. Okay. Yeah, Jesus Christ Superstar made its debut on Broadway in 1971, and the film was released in 1973, right? Yeah. So, yeah, 1971, it was music by Andrew Lloyd Webber and lyrics by Tim Rice. Again, I'm not going there because I've never seen it, and I know it's sort of controversial, especially in certain circles, so I'm not going there to touch it that way. I just found something fascinating about it, and that's the reason I'm bringing it up today, and that is this. They ask some really interesting things in that. At the time, I think, I don't really know much about these fellows, so I'm just, a little bit of research I did, I found that, this is sort of Andrew Lloyd Webber at the time. He was still sort of this brash young pup, and the guy Tim Rice at the time, I guess he was still new, so he's trying to make his mark on the world as a writer, and he was still writing sort of with this edge to him. And there was this debate. I maybe it still goes on today. Again, I don't know much about it. I'm not bringing it up to make a critique on it. I'm using it because I think it speaks to something greater. So forgive me if I'm making a mess of it here. But the point is, there's still an argument today, and back then, was it cynical? Did it raised all kinds of doubts? It sort of attacked the validity of Jesus. But there's another side to this. There's another side, that there was an attack on a cynical side and a disbelieving side of that whole thing. And again, I'm not reading. I never watched it. I don't plan on watching it. This is not an endorsement to go watch it. I just happened to find the lyrics of one of the songs that someone was referring to in an article I was reading, and I thought it was fascinating because I didn't read it. I think you could read it in several ways, because some of the questions they ask in the lyrics were, who are you? What have you sacrificed? Or one of the ones I think I came across was that it said, do you think you're what they say you are? Now, these are kind of like a little edgy questions, especially for someone who's kind to come to disprove. But I think there's something greater to be said, because to me now, and I'm sure back then it didn't appear this way, but I'm looking at it now because I think there's something here that we need to pay attention to. Because I believe Jesus Christ, the message of Jesus, the mission of Jesus, and who Jesus is going to be fulfilled in the earth. Jesus Christ is going to fulfill his mission in the earth. He's going to establish his kingdom. It's not a matter of if, it's not a matter of maybe. It is a definite, because he promised it. He promised it. Now, I'm not suggesting or saying today that we are the generation, but I believe if we're not the generation, we're another piece to that fulfillment. So whether or not you or I are alive when Jesus returns to this earth, to me, is an irrelevant question. The fact is, when we're here, whether we live to that point or not, it doesn't matter. While we're here, we are charged with the furthering of the kingdom of Jesus Christ. But there's something to be said because, again, I'm not trying to, and I might get into this a minute if I have enough time. I have this sort of in part 2 here, and I don't know if I'll be able to get down to it, but I'll come back later and talk about it. But I'll just say it this way. I believe the problem with Christianity as a whole, one of the problems with Christianity as a whole, is we've actually gotten away from Jesus. Now, I know it. I get it. I know what I just, what do you mean? Isn't Jesus the central piece? How have we gotten away from him? And you need to tell me we've gotten away. It's Jesus. Yeah, but wait a minute. Don't just glance at Christianity going down the highway at 100 miles an hour and glance over and try to, summarize Christianity. Stop for a moment, pull your car off the side of the road and look deep. And you realize something. Wait a minute. Christianity has gotten away from the message of Jesus because in some ways the message of Jesus is a little controversial. The message of Jesus Christ is a little too universal. It's kind of both. It's controversial and universal. It's confronting and comforting at the same time. It's dividing and uniting. It's rejecting and accepting all at the same time. And we don't like things that are messy. We want things that are definable. We want things that we can just point to that are definitive. We don't like mess. We don't like gray. We want black and white. We want it to be factual. We want to be evidential. We want to be able to go point back to here, when, where, how. Your Honor and the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, here's what happened, and that's what we want. But Jesus is somewhat not like that. It's a little messy. He came to proclaim the kingdom and to be the Messiah, and yet he rides in on a donkey weeping, not a sword and an army to conquer. This is sort of the irony of Jesus. So I read these questions. I read this lyrics, and I'm like, boy, from one standpoint, yeah, that was edgy to say that. Who are you? What have you sacrificed? I mean, my religious side kind of like, my religious side kind of rises up a little bit. What do you mean? How do you sacrifice? It's Jesus Christ. He died on the cross. How dare you even write that lyric? But I stopped for a moment, put my religious hat off to the side, and kind of wondered for a second. I don't know who Andrew Lloyd Webber is. I don't know who Tim Rice is. I don't know what their background is. I don't know if they were good people or not. I have no idea. That's not the point. But my point is, were they writing this from a cynical tear-down message? Maybe. But what if they were really seeking? They just didn't know who they were seeking for. Because think about it. It was as though in this song, what's interesting about this whole pivotal moment, and again, this is not, one more time to make sure, this is not a critique or an endorsement of Jesus Christ Superstar. I personally have never watched it, so I can't give any kind of, and I don't plan on watching it. I'm not using it. I'm not suggesting we do this and go all, make a case study off of it. That's not the point. And I'm not deeming it good or bad based off this. I'm using it as an assessment because it was in the 70s, right? It was 1971 that these questions were posed. Well, you kind of look at a little bit, and some of you were listening, lived through it. Whether you're young or old, you lived through it. The 60s and the 70s were a mess. You had drugs, sex, rock and roll, the kind of the moral decay. I mean, it was chaos. There was riots. I mean, people panic now because we have stuff going on. Can you imagine what the 60s would have been like with social media? Come on, some of those of you that lived through the 60s, can I get an amen? What would the 60s have been like with social media? Good Lord. What would it have been like on, in the 60s with the drug revolution and this, and the music revolution and the sort of the unleashing of sort of sexual perversion that just sort of got unhinged in the 60s and the free love movement. What would that have been like if you could have just thrown the proverbial gasoline on the fire of like social media? Goodness gracious. I can't even imagine what it would have done. Some of you are thankful back then you didn't have social media because all that's under the blood. Praise God, right? But it was sort of in this whole chaos that through all of the energy of the pop culture of the 1960s that had gone crazy, it all of a sudden there was this movement that was crying out and swung away from all this and swung away from the preoccupation with sort of the drug, sex, rock and roll scene and looking again at Jesus, that had sort of been forgotten, not their parents' version of Jesus, not the religious stoic version of Jesus, but like, okay, we're looking for answers, and we've gone to drugs and that's not working. We've gone to rock and roll and music and that's sort of not working. And we're now, we've turned to sex and that's not working. But where's the answer? And so there was a group, I think there was a cry in that time. And again, I'm taking sort of a sociological viewpoint on it. That's not the point, but I'm just kind of saying, wait a minute, time out. Let's look at this through a different lens. There's sort of this cry happening, and maybe that's part of what would cause them to write such lyrics. There was this cry like, okay, there needs to be an answer to solve these problems. There needs to be a solution to why we all feel this way and why we can't get satisfaction and peace and contentment with everything. I mean, my goodness, everything was, there was the sort of the free love, free world movement, nothing, everything counterculture and a rise up against the man. All of that's happening at the same time. But then it's like, wait a minute, let's look at this Jesus guy again. And it was kind of like this, oh, wait a minute, he's still there? Is he? Are you there, Jesus? Kind of where do you fit? And what are you about all this? What are you about? What are you about? And who are you? There's sort of this underbelly cry, because out of that you get these amazing, huge movements that start to arise. You get the Jesus revolution that they made a film on. You get some amazing sort of movements that reverted back to Jesus and exploded, because through all of this counterculture and all this muck and mire, there was a cry, because people realize the reason why people are going this route is because they're empty, they're hurting, and they're needing something, and church is not giving it to them, religion is not given to them. So what about this Jesus? And all of a sudden now people are starting to cry out, and even with these lyrics, I wonder if that's really what it was about. And sort of this idea that bounced back to at Jesus, but it was kind of a question. They kind of raised a question similar to what Jesus said. And Jesus said he said, who do you say that I am? But they were asking, who do you say that you are? Jesus said, who do you say that I am? But they're kind of asking, okay, Jesus, we want to know who you are, because everything's not working, but we keep hearing your name come up and it's still here 2,000 years later. So what are you all about? And I'm telling you this, and I'm stopping for a moment. This is not in my notes, but I'm going to stop for a moment. I'm telling you, for those of you who are paying attention, there is a new movement that is starting to build in our world, and that is this movement to get away from anything that defines us in any religious box or any religious decree or any religious movement, and just gets back to the simply part of Jesus Christ and who he is. And you get movements like He Gets Us, which is that group of people that have spent millions of dollars on advertising, and their commercials are just, whether or not you like them or not, whether you agree with them or not, whether they're doctrinally sound or not, whatever it is, the message is pure. It's just Jesus. And you have something like, I mentioned this the other night in teaching in the group on Tuesday night, and that was, you get something like a crowd-funded mini-series from a failed director on Jesus Christ, and he has gladly stated he's not trying to teach a theological message. He's trying to just get the message of Jesus Christ to a new generation. And they said something along the line, because it's really hard to figure out how many people have viewed, but they said something staggering like 200 million people have watched The Chosen. 200 million. That is putting it up with the same as some of the most popular TV shows of our generation. It is at that height, that Chosen. Why? Well, I got to be honest with you. There's been a lot of stuff on Jesus. The Passion of the Christ, and there's been a lot of stuff. But somewhere the way that the story's being told and how it's been presented has struck a chord. But really, it's hard to believe. Come on, let's be honest. It's hard to believe that something with the word Jesus or about Jesus would have that much popularity in a world where it seems a very popular narrative that if you say the word Jesus, you're ostracized or criticized or take your life in your own hand. But here's a show about Jesus that is so widely popular. In fact, I actually saw an interview, and he was even blown. The actor who plays Jesus, Jonathan Remy, I believe his name is. If you didn't ask me that, I would have been able to tell you now that I'm on the spot here. I think it was Jonathan Remy is his name. Someone's yelling at their phone. Yes, it's Jonathan, or no, it's not. I know it's not Bob. It's Jonathan is his first name. I think Remy's how you say his last name. Anyways, he made a statement. He said they were interviewing him on sort of the success of the show and what does it mean. And I will give it to him. I don't know him anything about him. Again, this is not endorsing anything. Every time you say something like this, people think you're endorsing it. It's an observation. It's not an endorsement. But anyways, I will say he's very humble. He's a very devout Catholic, and he takes the role of Jesus Christ very serious. And he's like, listen, I'm just an actor reading lines. I'm not Jesus or pretending to be Jesus. I'm just an actor reading lines. So if my portrayal of Jesus helps someone in their faith, I hope it's because they believe in Jesus, not because they're looking at me. And I thought that was a beautifully humbly said. But he made the statement that one of the things they asked him, what has been one of the most surprising things about the success of the show? And he said, and I got to take him at face value at this. He said they got a letter from someone, a member of the Church of Satan. And the person in this letter from the Church of Satan just made the statement how much that the show, they were impacted by the show and how much they liked the way the story is being told. I mean, good Lord. I say all that because there's something going back to Jesus Christ Superstar, and there's something even now today. There's a Jesus movement that is starting to build again, because again, we're never going to get around it. It's going to start with him. It's going to end with him, and he's going to be all about him. And nobody, no organization, no church, no creed, no personality, nobody's going to be able to get the credit, because it's all going to belong to him. And you and I have a choice to follow him and be a part of his movement, or try to start our own. Now, they asked the question, it was, the question Jesus said, who do you say that I am? And really, you could say the question that they were asking is, who do you say that you are? Now, I will say, again, from what I saw, just reading through some of the stuff, Rice and Weber did not give an answer. I don't even think they were trying to give an answer. That's not the point. I don't think they were giving a point. I think they were just sort of, whatever reason, to me, I think they're sort of like trying to just find answers, and they weren't trying to give an answer. They were just trying to pose the question of, is this an answer? And coming with a cynical viewpoint, because let's be honest, the message of Jesus and the church that associates itself with Jesus has used the message and used religion as a weapon more than it has done anything to help anybody. But here's the point. Whatever side you fall on, whatever generation you claim to be a part of, the problem remains important. And that is, it's the question of who Jesus actually was. What did he do? What did he say? What did he mean? It's the question that we all must ask ourselves. It's the question we all must find, not from some kind of psychological, sociological, view. It's the foundation of all of this. It's the face of everything. Is let's find out. We've got to know who Jesus is. We've got to find out what he was about. We've got to find out why he was more than just a religious figure, why he was more than just like everybody else. There was something greater than this, but sometimes when we look back on it, we got to look back with the right lens. We've got to look back at it at the right framework. And here's the point. With Jesus, it's easy to be complicated, and it's somewhat hard to be simple. And part of the problem is, and part of the difficulty is that Jesus was and is so much more than people imagine. Not just people in general. I'm talking about what Christians, you and I who profess to believe in Jesus Christ and profess to know him and walk with him, he's so much more than we imagine. And here's the point. It's kind of like this. What's the best way I can describe this? What I'm trying to say here. here's the best way. The computer that I have in front of me, it's an Apple MacBook. But the computer in front of me can do a large number of complex tasks. Apparently, the computer I'm holding in front of me, apparently, what I've been told, is that this computer has far much more computing power and technology in this small little laptop I'm holding in front of me than what was used to, it's my dog barking, by the way, if you can hear it, than what was used to take man from Earth to the moon. This computer I'm holding right now has more technology in it than what they had available to them to get man from the Earth to the moon. But it can do a large number of complex tasks. But really, sadly, I only use it for a couple of things. Kind of writing, communications, emails, whatever it might be, and internet, movie, video watching, whatever you want to do. And you know what? I got to be honest with you. Think about it. If my computer was a person, I think my computer might feel frustrated and grossly undervalued because its full potential is nowhere realized. Nowhere near being realized. In fact, I'm gonna look it up right now. Some of you would know these numbers. I think I know them, but I'm not sure I know them quite as some as you do. According to my computer, I'm looking it up right now. If I go up to the About file, my computer is an Apple M2 Max chip, 32 gigabytes of memory. It is running the Mac OS Ventura version 13.2.1 software. It has got a built-in Liquid Retina XDR display. And I've got a large hard drive. I won't tell you how big, but trust me, I'll never run out of space. Now, this is like gibberish for most of us, and some of you don't care. And it's amazing because I've got this sort of M2 chip. Now, I don't know what the M2 chip's all about. I'm not that much of a computer geek as far as that, but apparently this M2 chip is like the fastest chip ever built for computers. If you listen to Apple, this chip could, save the world. The M2 chip is the most advanced chip ever put in any computer in the history of mankind. I don't know if they say that, but, that's what they get you to believe so they can add another few zeros to the price tag. But hey, look, I know this. Apparently this chip is faster than my old computer 20 years ago. You guys remember those days? 17 minutes later, you finally get online and it takes you 4 minutes to download one page. And now I get, because the YouTube video buffers, my kids are like, this computer is just junk. Throw it out. I'm like, you guys have no idea. Goodness gracious. We were laughing at my kids the other day just about the fact of, what it was like when you went to watch a movie under the old VHS, right? And you'd get the video and you'd be ready to sit down a movie and you realize it hadn't been rewound. And you're like, who watched this movie last and did not rewind it? And then you had to sit there and you had to stop and you had to wait for days for the VHS to rewind so you could watch it again. And that just frustrated you. And then they came out with this mind-blowing technology called the automatic rewinder. And you could take it out of your VHS player and you could put it into a rewinder. And it was so fast. It was like, we have finally arrived. This is like something straight out of Star Wars. this thing is so fast. It's rewinding. This is so awesome. And now, we're told after my kids the other day are like, this, you guys have no clue, right? And I'm sure my parents did say the same thing. And, so does technology. But again, I'm going back to my point. I'm way off there. But I don't really use my computer for anything it can do. And watching movies, internet, writing emails, whatever it is. And I'm telling you, if my computer was a person, I guarantee you it would be frustrated, really undervalued, because its full potential is nowhere near being realized. But you know what? Here's the point to all that. We are, I believe, in that same position today when we read the stories of Jesus in the Gospels. We who are true believers and Christians and churchgoers use the stories that are in the Gospels, those 30,000 red letters, red words. We use them for various obvious things. We use them for like little moralizing sermons about how we can behave in the coming week, or maybe we use them for aids to prayer or meditation, and we use them for extra padding for a theological picture, largely constructed from outside other parts of the Bible. And Jesus and the Gospels that tell the story, very much like my computer, have every right to feel frustrated because their full potential remains completely unrealized. But more importantly than that, and worse than that, Jesus himself has every right to feel frustrated with you and I and Christians as a whole. Because what's crazy is when Christians hear about someone doing historical research on Jesus, Christians begin to worry that Jesus will emerge in a smaller, less significant form than we had hoped to find. Oh, they're going to find some evidence that Jesus really... But there are plenty of books out there that offer that. They offer down sort of a cut down to size Jesus, a Jesus who was just a great moral teacher, a religious leader, a Jesus that was a great man, but nothing more. But now Christians routinely recognize and sort of resist this reduction. We get that. We got to stay away from that. But importantly in all this, we need to come to realize we should be worried for the opposite reasons. Because the Jesus we'll discover, and we may discover if we really looked hard at Jesus, is larger and more powerful and more disturbing and more urgent than we Christians, the church, whoever have ever imagined. And we have successfully managed to hide behind other questions, and admittedly, there are important questions, and avoided the huge world-shaking challenges that Jesus' central claim and all of his achievements give us. Because it's us who have been it's us, the church, the Christians of today, the Christians, the practicing Christians who have been the real, here's a good word, reductionists, those who have reduced Jesus. We have reduced the kingdom of God to sort of this private piety, personalized, private growth. We've sort of reduced the victory of the cross to confront for the conscious, and we have sort of made Easter itself to be a happy escapist ending after a sad sort of dark tale. And I get it. Piety and conscience and happiness, they're important, but not nearly as important as Jesus himself. That's really what this is about. That's really what this is about. Because you see, the reason Jesus wasn't the sort of king people had wanted in his own day is that he was the true king. And they had become used to ordinary, shabby, second-rate kings. They were looking for a builder to construct the home that they thought they wanted, but he was the architect coming with a new plan that would give them everything they needed, but within quite a new framework. They were looking for a singer to sing the song that they had been humming for a long time, but he was the composer, bringing them a new song to which old songs they knew would form, at best, just the background music. He was the king, but he had come to redefine kingship itself around his own work and his own mission, and ultimately his own fate, his death, his burial, his resurrection. So I say all that because to me, in all this, and this started about a week and a half ago for me, but I'm just kind of fueled with it. I think it's time we just stop for a moment and recognize not only who Jesus is in his own day, despite the fact that the people around him, his contemporaries, and the world around him had a failure to recognize who Jesus was, but to also recognize who he is and will be for you and I. Because John says he came to what was his own, and his own people did not accept him. John 1:11. And no offense to anyone, but that still continues today. And perhaps if Jesus came today, it would have been the same in our day. Perhaps his own people, you and I. It wouldn't be the Jewish people of the first century, but perhaps you and I of the would-be Christian Western world wouldn't recognize Jesus if he showed up. Even with all the clues and all the things, because we say, well, we would definitely know. We'll definitely know when Jesus comes. We're smarter than that. They were brilliant too. My God, do you know that most Jews could recite vast majorities of the Old Testament by heart? My God, you got a Bible in every device you own, and most of us can barely even tell what the 66 books of the Bible are. We barely can tell anything about the Bible, and yet somehow we think we're going to know when Jesus shows up. Will we? Will we? Because in some ways, I think we're looking for a religious leader like they were. We're not looking for a king. We want someone to save our souls, yeah, but not rule our world. Huh. Or if we want a king, we want someone to take charge of our world, and we want someone to implement the policies we already embrace. Just as Jesus is the same contemporaries did. They wanted Jesus to kind of back them up on their stuff. We would do the same thing. But let's be honest, if we don't get Jesus right, what chances is there that other people will bother much at all if we don't get him right? So I have a challenge to you and to myself. Let's just get back to Jesus. Let's strip it all down and just get back to him. Because I'm telling you, when we do that, we're going to see some things we don't like. We're going to see some things that can change us, change our world, and be the catalyst to bring about his kingdom today. So before we dismiss all this and you go, well, Jesus came, I would definitely know. Sure, I would have been right there. Yep. I mean, more than likely they would have had to build a fourth cross because I would have been on it because I'm that devoted. Hold your horses. Hold your horses. There was a lot of powerful, devoted religious leaders of that day. There were a lot of powerful, devoted, pious, moral people of Jesus' day that didn't see Jesus, and he was standing right in front of them, flesh and blood. And on top of that, he was healing people, resurrecting the dead, and they still didn't get it. So before you and I dismiss all that and think we're so far advanced, let's be honest with ourselves and ask ourselves, what kind of Jesus are we looking for? Before we can find out who Jesus is, we got to ask ourselves, what kind of Jesus are we looking for? Are we looking for our version? Or are we looking for who he is, the real Jesus? Unfiltered, unchanged, untouched, just raw, just Jesus, just simply Jesus. Just Jesus, that's it. Just simply Jesus. Nothing more, nothing left, just Jesus. So, anyways, hopefully there was enough in here today. You get a desire to more. Sort of said there's a lot of cream in the middle of the cookie here. And be a little challenging to all of us, including myself, because if you don't want to answer these, this is my desire is to answer these. So I'd like for you to come along for the journey. Let's do this together. But this is something we all have to answer for ourselves, but I believe that there's a power in coming together as we seek to know him. So, again, I'm trying to do these every week. I hate to say that because every time I do that, it feels like something comes up and I just end up not being able to complete it, but that is the desire here. So, at least this is a good start. And if all this does is just provide a start for you to go on your own journey, then hey, it was worth it. But my prayer and my belief is that this is going to go hand in hand with all of us. So until next time, hopefully sooner than later, hopefully next week, but until next time, God bless you. Let's find Jesus, just who he is. Nothing more. Simple, straight, just Jesus.